I'll use this one temporarily. How's everyone doing tonight? Yeah. Thank you for coming. Could have been anywhere else, but you're here. So thank you. So, let's get that. Thank you. I feel comfortable with this one. I performed for the first time with this microphone, so it's kind of special to me. Alright, so. Alright, some of you guys may know me, some of you might be in my group. I know if you're Nathan Allen, you're sick of me, but, you know, we love you. So yeah, I'm just here to tell you a little bit about me, the background I come from. So I was raised by a single mother. I didn't have a father in the picture. Didn't know him, didn't know anything about him. So I was raised by my mother until the age of 7, when my stepdad came into the picture. And my stepdad is a great man. You know, he provided for me, loved me like his own. I call him my father because, you know, he guided me in the right direction to get to where I'm at today. You know, he's not perfect. He's got his vices with alcohol, and you know, a lot of stuff's happened to him in his past. And but ultimately, he loves me, and that's all I could ask for. When I was young, we moved around a lot. I probably went to every Frontier Central elementary school, except for Pinehurst, which I would have, because that's where I live now, is Lakeview area. But we moved around a lot, and I struggled to really, like, make friends as quick as possible. Like, that was always something I struggled with. I feared being alone because of not having my real father in the picture. Yes, I had my stepfather, but there was always that question in the back of my mind, like, why wasn't I enough? You know, I was still loved. My grandmother, who was my stepdad's mother, she was very religious. She had like the strongest faith I think I've ever met in a person. She had this saying, have a blessing, if you don't get one, create one. And she would say that to everyone. Didn't matter if you were working at McDonald's at the drive-thru or if you just robbed her, which luckily that never happened. But you know, she loved everyone. So yeah, I did whatever to keep friends, and actually let me backtrack back to my grandmother. She made sure that I was in religion, which is like Sunday school. It's like this, not as cool. This is much cooler. So that idea of there being a God was always part of something that I was raised on. So now let's get back to where we were. I moved around a lot. I struggled to keep friends. I, as I said, had a fear of being alone, and I did whatever, and I was very self-seeking. And later in life, that would really become like a downfall of mine, because it would lead me down, you know, bad paths. I developed some friends who I'm still friends with to this day, but they weren't the best influences of mine. And honestly, I think they kind of look up to me now as an example, which is, it's funny how life works that way. But I had a lot of bad habits as a kid that turned into addictions. Habits like stealing, lying, pornography was a big one. And as I was writing this, I kind of put myself back into that situation of a young 12-year-old kid, and I realized I kind of chased the adrenaline rush of knowing I was doing something wrong. And yeah, I started to kind of think about how that connects with where I would end up in my life. So, Dan, if you want to play that video, I don't know if you guys are fans of The Flash, but there's a little clip, and I just want to show you that kind of goes along with what I'm saying. So. So yeah, now that you've seen the video, I can explain where I was going with that. So I did some studies. As I said, I was kind of chasing that adrenaline rush, and I came to learn that I was seeing if there was a correlation between that and depression. And I came to find out that adrenaline creates high levels of anxiety and stress, and high levels of anxiety and stress create depression. So in that example, Flash, when he first is test running his powers, that in essence is the adrenaline rush. He's super happy about it. And then when he gets that flashback of Reverse Flash killing his mother, I correlate that with stress. And then shortly after that, the depression hits, and that's when he crashes. So I had a lot of feelings of insecurity and rejection growing up. And just living up to a standard of, what media paints of, you need to be cool if you're in high school and have all the friends and have the good-looking girlfriends, and I just wasn't that kid. I wasn't, the most popular, but I wasn't popular enough to my own standards, I guess. So one day I was faced with a decision that most high school kids and even middle school kids are faced with, and that is whether or not to smoke pot. And looking back now, I did not realize that decision was going to shape the rest of my life, but it did, and that's the real reality of it. So I smoked weed for the first time, and I felt amazing. I had a fake sense of happiness. I really felt a temporary relief, and I say those words because it is only temporary. It is only a false reality, because those feelings I felt then isn't what I was going to feel down the road. I gained quickly the reputation of the druggie in high school, and I felt that's all I deserved, and that's all I was going to live up to. So I continued with that reputation, and that quickly progressed to me doing more drugs and hanging out with the wrong people and using daily. It wasn't just like a weekend thing. It became a daily habit of smoking weed, drinking, dabbling with prescription drugs here and there. But then something very traumatic happened in my life that wrecked me for a long time, and still, is tough for me to deal with today. My grandmother passed away. She had cancer, and cancer takes lives. And when she passed away, it just left a huge gap in my life. I felt empty. I felt full of regret. The previous 2 years, when I knew she was sick, her and I didn't really have a great relationship. I was too busy hanging out with friends getting high, because I thought that's what life was about. And when she passed away, I was just broken, and that drove me into deeper drug use. And weed was no longer covering up the pain I had. So I started doing stuff like inhalants, hallucinogens, opiates. I developed a addiction to OxyContin, and I just lived a life of, wanting to do as many drugs as I could without dying. And honestly, if I had died, I probably would have felt better off than I felt then. So eventually, my school was just going down the drain. I wasn't showing up. When I was there, I wasn't there. I was defiant to teachers and all authority. And eventually, one day when I skipped school, I was just burnt out. My parents knew I was not doing good. They didn't know to the extent I wasn't doing good, but I wasn't doing good. And I gave in. My mother threatened me with inpatient rehab, and I couldn't fight it anymore. I was burnt out. Probably at the lowest I've ever been in my life, or one of the lowest. So when I was in rehab, I learned a lot about recovery, obviously, and proper ways to heal. And they say in rehab, when you get out, you're either going to stay clean, you're going to end up in more institutions when you relapse, or you're going to end up in a box. And that's the sad reality of it, because I know all too many people who are no longer with us, who have been in and out of rehab. And I was one of those people. I relapsed when I got out several times. There was many times that I fell back into where I was before rehab, and I found myself face down, facing death. I was being hospitalized, and I constantly fought depression and anxiety, because fighting a fight like that on your own is not easy. There's only so many times that you can, look death in the eye and be like, oh yeah, I'm good. I wasn't good, and that went over several years of just getting clean, relapsing, using again, being in a situation that isn't ideal for a human being. But somewhere along the line, God was working in my life, and I didn't even notice it. I had a sponsor or a mentor from rehab in the NA program, which is Narcotics Anonymous. They suggest that you get a sponsor, someone you can talk to about struggles you're dealing with, almost like a big brother or a father figure. And I was facing this really bad depression after I had quit drinking, because it came to a point where I had dropped the drugs and I was only drinking till I couldn't face reality anymore, and that I wasn't even really here. So I reached out to this guy, my sponsor, while I was getting clean and in a deep depression, and I asked him if he was still going to NA programs, and he said no, that he found Christ, and that Christ, it was the reason he was staying sober. And he suggested that I read Genesis, and he suggested that I start with prayer. So I did, because I had nothing else to lose. And I eventually fell out of it because I didn't get myself plugged in to more fellowship, but that had created an opportunity for me later in life to get to where I'm at today. And honestly, I keep in touch with him today. I had finally finished reading Genesis, and this was like 4 years later, and I was just like, I texted him and I was just like, hey dude, just so you know, I finally finished Genesis. And I just want to thank you, because had you not, spoke the truth, like, hey, listen, I know life's not easy, but there is something out there, and his name is Jesus, and he can help you if you let him, Just that he had the opportunity himself to say that to me, he changed my life. And So after many years seeing God work in my life without me even noticing, I finally came to a point where, seeing from the outside in other people's lives, I was just like, there's got to be something about this Jesus guy that, is great, because I see these people living this life for them, and they're happy, and they have something that I don't have. And when Jesus honestly saved me from myself, 100%. So I have a verse from John 5:1-9, and it really relates to me. So I'm going to read that to you. So it's the story of Jesus healing a lame man. It says, afterward, Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holy days. Inside the city, near the sheep gate, was the pool of Bethesda, with 5 covered porches. Crowds of sick people, blind, lame, or paralyzed, laid on the porches. One of the men lying there had been sick for 38 years. 38 years is a long time to be sick and paralyzed. When Jesus saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked him, "Would you like to get well?" That's kind of how he worked in my life. There was that time when I was just like at my lowest, and he put my sponsor in my life, and right there he was asking me, do I want to get well? And the story continues. It says, the lame man says, "I can't, sir, for I have no one to put me into the pool where the water bubbles. Someone else always gets there ahead of me." Jesus told him, "Stand up, pick up your mat, and walk." Instantly, the man was healed. He rolled up his sleeping mat and began walking. But this miracle happened on the Sabbath. I was the lame man, and the mat was my baggage. And when Jesus called, I didn't answer it the first time, but eventually I got up and I listened, and I'm walking now. And it's truly a blessing. So, I have a few questions, just food for thought for you guys. You don't have to answer out loud, but just some stuff for you guys to kind of think on. Ask yourself, would I or have I ever experimented with some type of substance? If yes, ask yourself why. The worst thing you can do is not face that issue, because it's never going to get better. Drugs aren't the answer to it. I know, because I've tried. So I did the hard part for you guys, so don't worry about that. Second question is, do you know anyone who is on or going down that path? If you do, don't ignore it. The worst thing you can do is watch someone ruin their life or throw it away and lose it, and sit there and know that you might have been able to change it. I had a friend named Richie. Him and I didn't really get along, but we hung out in the same group. And when I went into rehab, right before I went into rehab, he told me, "Hey, I think I'm gonna go to rehab too." And I thought he was just blowing smoke, because that was what Richie did. He said things to please people. And about a month and a half after I was in rehab, I saw him walking the campus. And I said, "Dude, you actually came." And he goes, "Yeah, dude, you inspired me to get clean." And that was the first time that someone ever showed me my worth. Sorry. Richie's no longer with us. Richie took his life because he struggled with addiction. I talked to him a week